the Star Wars movies and the level of happenstance that drives this movie. I mean, you start looking at how, well, all the conveniences for storytelling that take place in all the Star Wars movies, and everything just kind of unravels, kind of, oh, really? Oh, the droids just happened to land there. Oh, they happen to be close enough to where, that person is. And, oh, look, Finn and Poe just happened to wreck just close enough to where Finn didn't die over dehydration. And I just, the list goes on and on and on of all the conveniences. And so I think you can easily make a rational case that just because she is Kenobi's granddaughter and Luke's daughter doesn't mean the universe is all that small. Getting back to Kylo Ren really quick in terms of the Star Wars lineage, I just don't know how do you redeem that character unless he gets redemption and dies like Vader. He's you could have done it. No, you couldn't have. I mean, it's almost to say, I've heard somebody argue, well, because he killed Han Solo, he can't be redeemed. Completely glazing over the murder of Lor Santeca in the first, 10 minutes of the film. Oh, the old guy on Jakku wasn't enough for Kylo Ren to not be redeemed. He had to kill his father in order for him to not be redeemed, and I just don't buy that. And you were never going to have a circumstance with Darth Vader of him getting redemption and turning back to the light side at the end of the Return of the Jedi without him dying. I mean, how awkward would those conversations have been, right? And I heard somebody else do this on another podcast, and it absolutely rings true. Imagine if Darth Vader had actually lived at the end of Return of the Jedi, got on the shuttle with Luke, and then flew back to Endor to take part in the celebration. So Luke shows up, hey, Luke, you destroyed the Death Star, yay! And oh yeah, hey, here's my dad. And Vader comes walking in. I mean, talk about bringing the guy to the party that nobody invited, right? It's Darth Vader. No, he has to die. He has to die. Now, I do think it will be interesting to see how that light side, dark side plays into the upcoming movies, because it obviously presents a lot of different opportunities in the story process of Kylo Ren fighting the light side. Because interesting watching the movie again over the weekend and picking up on I guess I did pick up on new things. I said I didn't, but I guess I did. When he's talking to Supreme Leader Snoke and he makes the comment that, of being seduced by the light side. I won't be seduced. Well, he's talking about the light side. And I do feel that Daisy Ridley was chosen to be Rey partly because there is an intensity to her, and she will be tempted by the dark side. And I could absolutely see a storyline of Rey moving towards the dark side and Kylo actually maybe even perhaps encouraging her not to. Because he's conflicted in some way, shape, or form. Because did you notice at the end of The Force Awakens, right? There's two different shots where this happens. And then they're both after Kylo tells Rey, you need a teacher. I can show you the ways of the Force. It's interesting that Kylo didn't say, I'll show you the ways of the dark side. I thought that was very interesting, that he said the ways of the Force and not the ways of the dark side. Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back, when he was trying to seduce Luke, was very specific in saying, you don't know the power of the dark side. Kylo didn't do that with Rey. He was telling Rey, I'll show you the ways of the Force. He didn't specifically say the dark side. And we know through all the interviews that, he is a very conflicted character. But after she channels the Force and then starts to kick Kylo Ren's butt, two different moments. There's the moment where she throws the lightsaber up behind her head and does this down slashing moment before they get engaged and they end up forcing Kylo Ren's lightsaber into the snow. Where she steps back and she's almost like stalking around Kylo Ren, and she's got this angry look on her face. Man, it's a shot that mirrors Return of the Jedi and Luke at the end when he's getting the advantage over Vader, and he's on that precipice of turning to the dark side right before he decides to throw his lightsaber down. You could see the intensity in his face. It mirrors that shot. There's two different times when this happens. One time specifically, though, she's standing there, and it might be right before the ground erupts beneath them in the chasm. And the chasm opens up, the ground opens up into that gigantic chasm. But there's a moment when she's standing there with almost as if that rift in the ground hadn't opened up, through her anger, she may have destroyed Kylo Ren in that moment. It was only the ground opening up that kept her in check. That's the vibe that I got. So I believe that and even on Jakku, when she goes after Finn, when she first meets Finn, and BB-8 tells Rey that that's Poe's jacket. I mean, she's got an intensity about her, and when she's getting the Force, the dark side Force treatment from Kylo Ren, when she's in the torture chair or whatever, and she, you'll never be as strong as Darth Vader, and she freaks out. Again, it seems to me as a wasted opportunity if they don't go and utilize her as an actress and that sort of dark side intensity. And I think it makes for a rather compelling story if that's the case, because most people are saying that Episode 3 is going to get dark. As a matter of fact, one of the news items this week was John Boyega, who plays Finn, has read the Episode 8 script and has said that it's really, really dark. And if you've watched any of Rian Johnson's movies, there's 3, but specifically if you watch, not the Brothers Bloom. Brothers Bloom is good from a comedic standpoint, so you're going to get some comedy in Episode 3, which I think is part of what makes Episode 7, The Force Awakens, so great, is that level of comedy. But if you watch Brick or you watch Looper, and there is a darkness to Rian Johnson, and I think if Episode 8 mirrors the original trilogy at all, it's going to mirror it in the sense of it's going to be the middle act. And even Lawrence Kasdan has said this, who co-wrote The Force Awakens with J.J. Abrams. The middle act is where, everything falls apart. And The Force Awakens, for all intents and purposes, was a pretty dark movie. So if Episode 8 follows the same trend, and the same thing happened in Attack of the Clones. Everything began to fall apart. Then Episode 8 is going to be really dark when everything falls apart. And then Episode 9 will be the one where, the balance is returned and everything comes back again. Funny side note, I've been obviously on a Star Wars kick and been contemplating watching the prequel movies. I haven't watched any of the prequel movies since seeing The Force Awakens. And I wonder if this has happened to anybody else, because I'm almost afraid to. I love the prequels, but now that we've seen The Force Awakens, I'm afraid to go back and watch the prequels because I don't want to be judging them based off The Force Awakens. I still want to like them just as much. I think it's one of those things where I'm going to have to go back and watch them just to get over that. It seems really silly, right? Star Wars problems. People talk about first world problems. These are Star Wars problems. They're really not that significant, but they are if you're a Star Wars fan. So instead, being on my Star Wars kick, I decided that I was going to go and watch Godzilla. Because Gareth Edwards, who was directing Rogue One, directed Godzilla. And I wanted to look at Godzilla through the eyes of knowing this is the guy who's going to helm Star Wars Rogue One, which is supposed to be a war movie, sort of a Saving Private Ryan. And we discussed this last week at length. Some news items came out this week in regards to sets, and even some photographs came out of some of the sets, specifically some up-close shots of an X-Wing fighter, which was very reminiscent of it was the original X-Wing fighter. It wasn't the X-Wing fighters, obviously, that we saw in The Force Awakens. These were the same types of X-Wings that we saw in the original trilogy, although they had different paint jobs on it. One of the things that I'm really interested to find out as it relates to Rogue One, which obviously takes place, as we talked about, right before A New Hope does, is, I hope they don't end up introducing new ships that we would speculate that we should have seen in the original trilogy. I mean, that would be a really, really, it's either a really tough order or it's a really easy order. Because either you just go the route of making sure that the vehicles and the main spaceships that you have match the original trilogy, but then you're not really bringing in anything new, and they still want to go and sell toys. So hopefully it stays with paint jobs and things of this nature to go and change things up a bit. I do know that they are utilizing the drop ships, and we've actually seen some production photos behind. What's the word I'm looking for? These were leaked photos, but leaked set pictures from Rogue One, where they were reusing the drop ships, the First Order drop ships from The Force Awakens, and I'm really curious to see what they do to make them different. Because I guess the speculation is the Empire would have been using these same types of dropships, but we never saw them in the original trilogy. And I know this is going to be one of those moments where you listener are going to be like, John, don't say that. We don't want that. But, if they end up going that route, I almost wouldn't mind there being either even further special editions to the original trilogy where they make them match more, meaning they put in some ships from Rogue One into the original trilogy to make it all match up. I know. Don't ever say special edition. I do. We're running out of time. I got to wrap up the podcast, but I really do hope that for the fans, we get an extended cut of The Force Awakens. I know that J.J. Abrams has said we are only going to end up getting the deleted scenes, but I really hope they put together an extended edition and put in those action sequences they cut, as long as it doesn't go and mess with the continuity of the storytelling. I really hope they do that, man, because I really want to see. I want to see the 2 hour and 45-minute version that they said that they had, what the first cut of The Force Awakens was. All right, before we wrap up real quick, I wanted to share this story with you. Weary of seeing fans victimized by unscrupulous dealers and bogus autographs, Mark Hamill has teamed up with a California assemblywoman, Ling Ling Chang, to extend protections that apply to sports memorabilia to all signed collectibles sold by dealers in the state. The public is being swindled on a daily basis, and the numbers are huge. I just can't keep quiet when I see people I love being hurt, Mark Hamill told the Los Angeles Times. Now, under the new bill, the Diamond Bar California Republican would require certificates of authenticity for signed memorabilia sold by dealers and entitled duped consumers to as much as 10 times the cost of a forged item in civil court. State law already offers those remedies for signed sports memorabilia. And Mark Hamill said it makes no sense that film fans don't get the same protections as sports fans from faked autographs. I think that's pretty cool. By the way, man, that last shot of The Force Awakens, when you see Luke, it really is amazing to me that here we've had all these years from having an original trilogy movie and seeing Luke Skywalker, and we go through all of The Force Awakens without seeing Luke Skywalker, only to get a few seconds of him saying nothing at the end of the movie, and yet it completely and totally satisfies, right? You don't complain at all that you didn't see Luke the whole movie. And they said the reason they didn't put Luke in the movie was because the moment that he arrived on screen, it would have taken away from all the other new characters they were trying to build, and they absolutely made sense. And how cool is it that we know that more than likely we're going to get Episode 8 that's going to be filled with Luke Skywalker and with Rey and Daisy Ridley's character? Oh, can't believe we got to wait until, a year and a half now? All right. Hey, thanks for hanging out with the podcast today. Again, if you want to drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. And you got any questions, I'll answer them on the next podcast. Follow me on iTunes. Drop me a rating and leave me a comment there. It would be greatly appreciated. And until next week, may the Force be with you always.